and welcome. You're watching Global Lens with me, Archana Solanki. The top story: the U.S. Supreme Court has dealt a major setback to U.S. President Donald Trump and his anti-immigration agenda. The court has ruled that Trump's executive order restricting birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. The decision means the U.S. will continue to grant automatic citizenship to children born in the country to undocumented migrants or parents on temporary visas. The ruling upholds a 150-year-old legal precedent and reaffirms the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. The court's decision, written by Chief Justice John Roberts, said, and I quote, "Citizenship then and now was the right to have rights to freely participate in our political community. The framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every freeborn person in this land. We keep that promise today." End of quote. The justices voted 6-3 in favor of upholding birthright citizenship. One of the dissenting justices wrote a 90-page opinion. Justice Clarence Thomas agreed with Trump's assertion that the 14th Amendment only applied to former slaves and their descendants. Meanwhile, Justice Brett Kavanaugh concurred with the judgment but said the executive order violated federal law rather than the Constitution. He added that Congress remains free to amend existing legislation or pass a new law limiting birthright citizenship. President Trump denounced the ruling, calling it too bad for the country. In a social media post, he urged Congress to pass a law banning birthright citizenship. Now, Trump has long taken a personal interest in the issue. It was a key part of his immigration platform during the 2024 campaign. He signed the executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship just hours after returning to the White House last year. Trump also became the first sitting president to attend a Supreme Court hearing when the case was heard in April this year. The court's move also brings relief to many Indians living in the U.S. People of Indian origin make up an estimated 5.2 million of the country's population, with a decades-long green card backlog for Indians on H-1B visas. Many of their children are born in the U.S. before their parents can become permanent residents. Let's listen into what people celebrating the judgment had to say.
As a U.S. citizen child, I should not have to be wondering if my parents will come back home. And since this president took office, I have even had to wonder if I would come home. Pregnant mothers are afraid of their babies not being able to have a home. Our families are worth fighting for, and our communities are worth fighting for.
You know what I want you to know? Is that I am the proud daughter of Maria Elvira Ramirez Guerra, a Guatemalan immigrant who crossed the border pregnant with me. I am a citizen by birthright, whereas some of my colleagues would try to call me. I've been anchored in this country. I'm not going to exactly use the words that they use. But here's what I'm going to tell you. What's more important is that I am an American, and every single person in this country, if you're born here, you're an American, period, punto, no exceptions. Am I right?
With the birthright citizenship judgment, the U.S. Supreme Court has concluded one of its most momentous terms. Following the summer break, the court will reconvene for its next term on the first Monday in October. For President Trump, the court handed down some major losses, but also expanded some of his powers. For instance, earlier this week, the court's ruling gave the president effective control over independent regulatory agencies by allowing him to fire their leaders at will. The ruling overturned a 90-year-old precedent that had shielded agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, the Labor Board, and the Merit Systems Board from at-will removal. But the Federal Reserve remains out of Trump's reach. For now, the Supreme Court said that Trump cannot fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook while litigation continues in the lower courts. The justices sent the case back on procedural grounds, leaving the door open for Trump to try again. The biggest loss came in February this year. The court struck down Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose sweeping global tariffs on America's trading partners. Now, here's what made it sting. Now, two of the judges in the majority were his own appointees, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. Trump criticized both, saying they were bad for America. A few months before that, the Supreme Court blocked from deploying the National Guard troops to Chicago following an unrest amid the federal immigration crackdown. Recently, the court also rejected a lawsuit filed by the Republican Party and supported by the administration that would have disallowed some mail-in ballots during the 2026 midterm elections. All in all, this was not a court that simply voted along predictable party lines. It had 6 Republican appointees and 3 Democratic appointees. Some of Trump's biggest losses on tariffs, mail ballots and birthright citizenship came because his own appointees voted against him. All right, so this was the big story that we were tracking as far as the U.S. Supreme Court is concerned. Now, here's another headline that is dominating the global media. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump made over $1 billion through his cryptocurrency ventures in his first year back in office, according to his own financial disclosures. He earned more than $600 million through the sale of souvenir-like meme coins. Rachna Dhanrajani has more. Rachna.
Absolutely, and it's now safe to say that for President Donald Trump, crypto is no longer a side venture because it's the largest line on his balance sheet. The number is $1.426 billion in crypto income for 2025. That's according to a 927-page filing with the Office of Government Ethics. For comparison, his golf clubs, hotels, Mar-a-Lago combined brought in around $290 million. So crypto out-earned his entire legacy real estate business nearly 5 to 1. That $1.4 billion then breaks into 3 separate entities. $635 million from licensing his name to the Trump meme coin through CIC Digital, $594 million from World Liberty Financial, the venture run by his sons Don Jr. and Eric. The Trump family holds a 38% stake and collects 75% of token sale proceeds, and further $196 million from Stablecoin Holdco, a separate Trump-controlled entity. Now, the governance angle. Presidents and vice presidents are exempt from the conflict of interest laws that would bar this kind of arrangement for any other federal employee. That's written into the law itself, which means none of this is illegal in any way. But it does mean disclosure is the only real check, and critics, including Trump's own former White House special counsel, Tay Cobb, call this the most significant conflict of interest exposure in presidential history. And there's a timing twist here as well, because this disclosure has landed the same week Bitcoin logged its worst month in over 2 years, down 20% in June, with the heaviest ETF outflows since launch. So a large share of this wealth, the WLFI tokens, the meme coin holdings, still sitting in family wallets, is worth considerably less today than it was earlier. Now compare all of this to Vice President J.D. Vance. His filing runs 17 pages against Trump's 927. Vance holds up to $500,000 in Bitcoin, a passive position on Coinbase, generating no income for now. But his real money still comes from Hilly Billy Elegy royalties, his book. The White House response has stayed consistent. Spokesperson Anna Kelly says there are no conflict of interest and calls the scrutiny a recycled narrative. Be it as it may, but the filing settles one thing. For a presidency built on real estate, the real business now is crypto.
Thank you, Rachna. On to West Asia now. Iran insists that talks on a final deal will not begin until U.S. fulfills the commitments spelled out in the MOU. Now, here are the latest developments. Tehran's chief negotiator, Mohammad Ghalibaf, has called the Hormuz Strait their greatest instrument of power. He also warned that free passage through the Strait of Hormuz is guaranteed for only 60 days. Ghalibaf also told state media that the Gulf states had requested for the concession. Meanwhile, indirect U.S.-Iran technical talks are underway in Doha, with Qatar and Pakistan serving as mediators. Reuters reported that Trump's envoys Kushner and Witkoff met Qatar's Prime Minister to lay the groundwork for technical talks, but are not attending the sessions themselves. The negotiations are reportedly focused on release of Tehran's funds in Strait of Hormuz. Washington has expressed optimism on the ongoing negotiations. U.S. President Donald Trump has said, and I quote, "Iran is getting along very well," end of quote. President Trump made the remarks while heading to take his first flight on the new Air Force One gifted to U.S. by Qatar. In the oil markets, Brent crude prices eased as investors remain cautious over the outcome of the negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. According to maritime data from Kepler, 34 vessels passed through the strait yesterday. However, transit has not returned to pre-war levels. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held a call with the Iranian president, stressing the need for freedom of navigation in the waterway. Let's listen in to what the stakeholders in the peace negotiations have to say.
Iran is moving along well. They've had very good meetings, and we'll see. We hit them very hard for 3 nights, as you know, but we're getting along very well. So I call it the denuclearization. And it's all taking place. It's all going well. The stock market is setting records virtually every day. The oil price is way down. We're down at 68. I see it hit 68 today.
اینجا متعهدیم
Under the agreement, Iran is committed, within 30 days, and about 8 days of that period have now passed, to remove the technical obstacles in the strait, address navigational safety issues, deal with any mines or similar hazards that need to be cleared, and restore conditions so that the ships that had been there before the war can transit safely. For the first 60 days, we will not charge those vessels for these services.
The movement in the strait should not be hindered by any logistical or security management method. We believe that the strait is a natural occurrence. It's open. The international maritime laws are very clear on this. On the current situation, of course, because of the war situation, we have the issue of the mines. We have the security concerns with all these attacks happening. Of course, there is a need for coordination between the parties, and this is why we established a channel of coordination to make sure that there is a security channel that can oversee the vessels going in and out through the straits and making sure that there are no hindrances. And hopefully within 30 days, when the demining happens, we can have an open strait that doesn't have any security concerns for those going in and out.
Right, in Pakistan, a roof collapse at a tutoring center under construction in Lahore killed 14 school children. According to police officials, 8 other children have also been injured and are being treated at hospitals. Now, families were seen grieving the death of their children as search and rescue operations continued. The death toll is likely to be higher. The owner of the tuition center has been arrested. European scientists are warning global ocean surface temperatures have reached a record high in June. 2 separate services under the European Union's Copernicus Earth Observation Programme have independently confirmed the record temperatures. This has raised concerns over a more intense and frequent heat waves this summer. Now, large parts of Europe continue to sizzle under a severe heat wave. More than 1,000 people have died in France, and the government is facing the threat of a no-confidence motion. French Green Party lawmakers have announced plans to try and topple the government over its handling of the heat wave. It remains unclear if the motion will be tabled this week or early next week. On that note, we'll take a short break. Coming up next, we'll take you a ride back in time. On this day, 47 years ago, something very interesting happened, and it's got to do with nostalgia and music. This is the story of the Walkman. Stay tuned, we'll be back. Welcome back. It's been a week since the strong earthquakes of magnitude 7.2 and 7.5 tore through Venezuela. Even now, miracle rescue stories are emerging from the rubble. The World Food Programme is appealing for $50 million to provide emergency food assistance to up to 5 lakh people. The earthquake has killed about 1,943 people so far. Efforts are still underway to search for survivors. Rescue teams managed to pull a 12-year-old from the rubble who was trapped in the debris. Residents of La Guaira, one of the worst-hit regions, have joined the search through collapsed apartment buildings in the hopes of finding members of their families. Here's the story of one such Venezuelan resident, Juan Andre, who has been digging through the ruins.
This man has spent days sifting through the rubble of a collapsed apartment building in Venezuela. Juan Andrade has been searching for his missing family after 2 powerful earthquakes caused widespread destruction in La Guaira and Caracas. The 27-year-old was away from home when the disaster struck and returned to scenes of devastation. He says his entire family, including his mother, sister, and wife, is trapped. Working with volunteers, Andrade has crawled through narrow gaps in the concrete, using only flashlights and his bare hands. Although he's not a trained rescuer, he helped pull 9 people out alive during the first 2 days after the disaster. Andrade said reaching the spot where he believes his relatives are trapped has been extremely difficult. Still, whenever he hears cries for help from other areas, he stops to assist.
It is frustrating because I haven't been able to reach my family, but God told me we have to help other people because the building is like this and my family is on this side. For me to get there will need God's help, but people were shouting at me from these areas, towards that area up there. If I can't get my own out, I'm going to get out the people I can get out.
Despite the slow progress and limited official rescue support, Andrade refuses to give up.
It has been quite hard and complex, but faith is the last thing to be lost. We are going to keep working here until we can get everything out, whether people come or not, whether help comes or not.
The UK government is facing flack over a proposed asylum policy. Under the new policy, refugees granted asylum would be required to repay around £10,000 towards the cost of taxpayer-funded housing and support after they become financially stable. The proposal would require individuals granted refugee status to make repayments in monthly installments once they begin earning above a threshold that's yet to be specified. According to the UK Home Office, the repayment would be a flat rate contribution aimed at recovering part of the public expenditure on asylum support. The proposal forms part of a wider package of immigration reforms that also includes expanding detention capacity, increasing immigration enforcement, and accelerating the removal of foreign criminals and failed asylum seekers. The Refugee Council, which is one of Britain's leading charities, called the new policy unfair and impractical. The council went on to say the plans amounted to an extra tax on refugees and would make it harder for families to rebuild their lives. Now, the world's super rich continue to accumulate wealth at a rapid pace. A report by Swiss bank UBS says that billionaires' wealth grew by an average 25% in the year ended April amid an AI boom. That's more than double the 10.8% rise in average personal wealth worldwide. The number of billionaires jumped 13% to a record 3,302 people. As per the report, 18 people now hold fortunes between $50 and $100 billion, while 19 people have crossed the $100 billion mark. 15 of these ultra-high net worth individuals are based in the US. Now, three leading US chip makers, Micron Technology, Intel, and Advanced Micro Devices, or AMD, added nearly $2 trillion in combined market value during the second quarter. This comes as investors broadened their AI bets beyond NVIDIA. While Micron's stock surged more than 240%, Intel jumped over 216%, and AMD nearly tripled in value. NVIDIA, which remains the world's most valuable company, gained a comparatively modest 15% during the quarter. The Trump administration has lifted the export restrictions on Anthropic's latest AI model, Fable 5. With this, Anthropic is restoring access to its customers. The back and forth between the company and the US government has troubled many of the company's overseas clients. Questions were also raised about the US government holding a potential kill switch on the latest AI technology. Here's a report.
Anthropic says the US has lifted export controls on its latest AI models. The move comes less than 3 weeks after the company was forced to suspend access to its newest products over national security risks. That prompted Anthropic to abruptly disable its Mythos 5 and Fable 5 models. Washington has stepped up oversight of new releases to identify potential threats. That is over concern that advanced AI could be misused by intelligence agencies in China, Russia, and elsewhere. Now, Anthropic says it will start restoring access from Wednesday. In a letter seen by Reuters, US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the export controls were withdrawn and a license was no longer required for the export of Mythos and Fable. Lutnick says Anthropic has agreed to work with the administration on protocols and standards and will proactively seek to detect security risks. The government's vetting of which companies can access the latest models has drawn widespread criticism. Last week, OpenAI boss Sam Altman said he didn't object to safety testing. He just didn't like Washington getting to pick the customers.
Now, decades before Spotify or Apple, it was Sony that revolutionized how people listen to music. Let's go back in time. Let's take a quick detour into history. On this very day, 47 years ago, Sony unleashed the world's first portable cassette player, the Walkman. All of a sudden, music could travel with you, the transistor radio, and that did exist before. But let's be honest, it did not sound great. And here's the fun part. I mean, it's subjective. For a lot of people, the radio was a lifeline. But the Walkman actually changed everything. It wasn't born in a lab. It was born out of one man's travel needs. Sony co-founder Masaru Ibuka loved listening to opera on long-haul flights, but had to carry around Sony's bulky TC-D5 tape recorder to do it. That device was the size of a cereal box. So Ibuka turned to his deputy and asked him to do something about it. Norio Oga's team gutted an existing recorder popular with journalists, bolted on a set of headphones, and a prototype of the world's first on-the-go music player was born. A few months of engineering. Later, the Walkman hit Japanese shelves on July 1st, 1979. Just 3,000 units sold in the first month. But Sony figured the right way to market it. It sent the staff out onto the streets of Tokyo, handing out headphones to strangers and letting them listen for themselves. And that's when the Walkman took off. It was sold as the Soundabout in the US, the Freestyle in Sweden, and the Stowaway in the UK, before the world just settled on calling everything a Walkman. By 1990, Sony had rolled out dozens of models. The company sold around 200 million cassette Walkmans before finally retiring the product in 2010. Many blame the CDs and the rise of Apple's iPod for it. So what is your Walkman story? Let us know. All right, from music, let's talk about football now. It's time to talk about the FIFA World Cup. Haaland's winner set Norway past Ivory Coast. Mexico beat Ecuador on home turf, winning their first knockout match in 40 years. Kylian Mbappe scored twice against Sweden to power France to the pre-quarter-finals of the FIFA World Cup. Matthew is here with more. Matthew.
Kylian Mbappe isn't just scoring goals, he's dribbling straight through the World Cup record books. Every time he puts on the French shirt, another piece of history seems to fall. The 27-year-old's brace saw him overtake Miroslav Klose's all-time World Cup goals tally that stood before this tournament. It also leaves him just one goal away from the current record holder, Lionel Messi. And that's not the only record that he's put in the back of the net. Mbappe has now scored a staggering 10 goals in World Cup knockout matches, smashing the previous record of 8 that was jointly held by Brazilian legend Ronaldo Nazário and fellow Brazilian great Leonidas. To put that into perspective, Messi has scored 5 knockout goals at the World Cup, while Cristiano Ronaldo, perhaps surprisingly, never found the back of the net in a World Cup knockout match. And if that wasn't enough, Mbappe has taken another big step towards the Golden Boot. His 6 goals at this tournament have drawn him level with Lionel Messi. But it's his all-round game that's giving him the edge. With 2 assists to his name, Mbappe currently sits ahead of the Argentine in the race for the Golden Boot, proving that he's not just a finisher, he's also creating chances. And speaking of creating chances, Michel Olise was pulling strings like a midfield conductor last night. The French playmaker produced a sensational hat-trick of assists, taking his tally to 5 for the tournament, the most of any player at this World Cup. In fact, since assists began being tracked, only Pelé has ever recorded more in a single edition of the tournament. It wasn't just individual brilliance lighting up the night either. France continued to rewrite the history books as a team. Les Bleus have now become the first nation in World Cup history to win 7 consecutive matches against European opposition. They've also scored at least 3 goals in each of their last 5 World Cup games, the longest such streak the tournament has ever seen. With Mbappe breaking records and France breaking defenses, Les Bleus are looking less like contenders and more like the team to win it all.
All right, thank you, Matthew, for that. Before we go, Serena Williams' much-anticipated singles return to Wimbledon Championship ended in a shock first-round exit. The 23-time Grand Slam champion lost to 20-year-old Australian Maya Joint in her first singles match in nearly 4 years. Despite the defeat, Serena's Wimbledon campaign isn't over yet. She will still feature in doubles alongside sister Venus Williams. However, reports suggest she may have injured her knee in the match against Joint. All right, with that, it's a wrap on another edition of The Global Lens. We'll be back tomorrow. Goodbye and many thanks for watching.